Our next guest is Peter Joseph, filmmaker and founder of the Zeitgeist movement. The Zeitgeist movement believes that social issues like poverty and pollution are the direct result of an inefficient social structure. In this segment, I first asked Peter to tell us more about his background and how he got the movement started. Take a look at what he had to say.
I was trained as a classical musician, and then I went to an institution for 2 years, racked up a lot of debt, and realized my second year of college that I was going to be paying for this debt for the rest of my life. So that was my first impression of the financial system. So I bailed from that, and plus the idea of being a solo classical musician was just about as absurd as you can get as far as an economic career, probabilistically. So from there I went to advertising, and which was a unique stretch. I always kind of abhorred the manipulation of society, but in the arts, a lot of people gravitate towards advertising because it gives them some kind of outlet to stay somewhat in their medium as far as expression. So I did that for many years. I didn't like that either, of course, which of course is that's the belly of the beast when it comes to corporate America. Advertising is one of the largest, is the most funded institution in the corporate world in many ways. Most companies spend more money on advertising to manipulate society than they do with actual production and R&D. From there, I went actually to invest in, to work privately for about 6 years as a Wall Street investor and financial trader. I did that from my own account for many years, and that was actually my long-term goal, was to secure that and to be free of the corporate vertical structure. And I did that, and that's where I pretty much learned about how despotic the financial and basically the market system by extension actually is. So my background pretty much is in, professionally, is in the two worst institutions on the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned, advertising and Wall Street. And that's what brings me to where I am today as I began to survey the world around us to see why things are the way they are.
You recently released a video on YouTube in which you talk about the economy and specifically the 3 principles of market economy. So can you tell us about this video and why you decided to produce and publish it now? You know, I have to say, Peter, it really reminded me of Ray Dalio. He came up with something like this about, you know, the crisis and these kind of easy to understand, almost animated videos. They're helpful, but what was your purpose for producing now?
So the video was broken into 3 different sections. I basically asked 3 rhetorical questions to the audience. The first has to do with the issue of ecological sustainability. As you are probably well aware, we are in the 6th great extinction. We have lost the vast majority of biodiversity on this planet. All interests by the United Nations and other collective organizations country-wise have tried to stop this, but they can't because literally no investment in their own terms is going into conservation and sustainability, which is kind of an internal joke if you think about it. Of course nothing would go into conservation. The entire economy is based on cyclical consumption and constant turnover. So when you have an economy based on people needing jobs, and you need growth, of course, to keep things going. And into the holiday season right now in the West, that's all anyone's talking about is sales forecasts. You know, no corporation in their boardroom gets together and says, you know what, we sold 4,000 units last year. Let's see if we can only sell 2,000 next year. So the entire thing is based on overt consumption. It's the new civic duty. And in that, you're never going to have a sustainable environment. You know, I could go on a long list of the proof of this. You know, people can talk about market theory versus reality, but the proof is in the world that you see around you. Again, the things I've listed about the loss of biodiversity, exorbitant pollution, both air, land, and water. The entire ecosystem of the ocean is in collapse. By mid-century, we'll be pretty much out of fish. So I could go on and on about that. Point being is the first of those 3 questions was to ask, is there an incentive to conserve? Is there an incentive to be sustainable? And the answer is no. The second question had to do with technological unemployment, something that was deemed a Luddite fantasy about 40 years ago. This idea that technology has been replacing jobs, not only replacing them, but actually making jobs more productive. There's an inverse relationship today between human employment and productivity in virtually all sectors, and the more we automate with this advanced technology, the more productive and cheaper, by the way, the medium becomes, which is profound as far as our ability to free ourselves as a civilization, but is also in direct dichotomy with what the market requires, which you need people employed, obviously. You can't have a system where people are not employed. That isn't what the market its foundational premises. So that incentive question was, is there an incentive to keep human beings employed in the wake of a circumstance where emerging technology, and again, you can ask any technical analyst in the science and technology fields about the possibility of replacing human labor, And there are numerous studies within the past 2 years that said, from MIT, that said half of all human occupations can be replaced today. And that's only going to get more and more dramatic as the service industry, which has 80% of all human employment, crashes into this new reality of AI, which is going to start replacing most of the service sector jobs, from restaurants to accounting to even writing news articles, which has already been happening in automated means today. So that was the second incentive. Second question, is there an incentive to actually keep human beings employed? And the answer is no. And I'll jump to the third one real fast so I don't keep babbling without our interaction. The third one has to do with something called structural violence, which is a form of systemic violence that can only be measured across a population. To give an example of this, actually I'll give you a recent example. It was reported
Peter,
in the UK.
Before we get to that example, I want to go back so that we can do this, kind of chronologically, because I want to hear what you're going to say with the third one. But I want to first ask you, what is a market economy? You say that with capitalism, market-generated poverty and inequity, they're inevitable. So why is that?
Well, part of it's evolutionary and part of it's structural. Both of them are structural. The gaming strategy of the market, what people actually do in a market system to assure their self-interest, whether you're an individual laborer or a company, systemically creates imbalance. I'll define the market because many people have a problem with what market or capitalism is. I'm going to go ahead and define it for you as far as the three attributes that really make this system what it is. The first is that you need labor for income. If you don't have labor for income, then the system has no foundation as far as cycling the money and keeping it going. The second is all goods and services retain property value, hence exchange value. That's the medium. People use money, and these values transverse. It's indivisible, so you're able to qualify everything in monetary terms. And the third issue has to do with the gaming strategy, as I mentioned before, where input costs are going to be as low as possible, cost efficiency, all the outsourcing, slave labor, what have you, cheap materials to use to be competitive, and you maximize output costs. That's the other side of the gaming strategy. When you put all three of these things together, you end up with a highly competitive, game-oriented structure that, through the spreading of this behavior across a society of millions and billions of people, you inevitably end up with pockets of leverage and pockets of disimbalance, people that have so much more capacity to rig the system, to use the state to their advantage, because the state mechanism is just another element of differential advantage, something that people in the Austrian school and the free market concept, free market people that conceptualize this, they say, well, there's interference, you shouldn't have this. They morally relativize things. But the truth is that people will manipulate and they will create cartels, monopoly as a form of differential advantage, and that is just another extension of the basic foundation of competition in a market system.
That was Peter Joseph, filmmaker and founder of the Zeitgeist movement.